Okay, guys, what is up, everybody? Got two home run trades, or I mean, they're both really good trades. Want to show you exactly how that happened. Unfortunately, I streamed in 720, so this profile is going to be a little skewed. It's a 4-second chart. This was the VPOC where the blue line is at 35 even. And if we really scroll back on the deal, and again, because this profile is accounting for the close and everything, so it wasn't looking like this at this time. But so back here, we had a lot of auctioning happening below 35. So as you can see on the 4-second, there was a lot of auctioning just below it, and then you have this massive push down, very overextended move down, and then we started to creep our way back up, get through the VPOC, and we started to bounce and trade above it. So what happened was the market really started to end up going sideways, and you can see right up here, we kept stopping right here at this 45, and then we slowly drifted down. Quite a bit of consolidation and range trading, and then we bounced off the VPOC at 35 right here. I know it chopped through it, but that's a pretty overextended move down, and we come through it and bounce. This is a move. It used to have a name. I'm renaming it the Boom and Zoom. So up here where these three areas are, there's a lot of stops accumulating in here. I mean, look at right in here. Just a lot of stops accumulating where I'm putting this. So kind of right where this line is. That's why you have this intense blowout. But it wasn't. I mean, that's not the only thing you have to look at. It's just the way this pattern was panning out. This is the VPOC. Usually, you auction below it for a good while, or above it. It really depends, and eventually, it'll start to cross that zone and stay above the VPOC. So this is sort of like the line in the sand, and now we're auctioning above it. And we had put in this high here. So judging by the way this thing bounced really nicely off the VPOC, I knew that there's a high probability we were going to test up in here, but I want to kind of bring it more into context by looking at the depth of market. It's a little easier to see. And what you're looking at here is actually the start of this move down right here. And also, I mean, you do have this sort of like divot, this lower noted area that was sort of holding the market up. So that's kind of also why you're seeing the market being held up here. But again, this is the VPOC, and that's pretty major. Just the way the profile's set up is a little more of a trickier read. I mean, because you have this bell curve here, and then you have the larger bell curve down here. So the way it trades and the way it moves between the two is a little more trickier of a read. And I'm going to do my best to explain this. So you're going to see it come down here, and I want to show the whole deal, the whole setup. And unfortunately, it is 7:20. I wish I could have streamed in 10. But the tape really comes into play on this entry. And typically I don't get in right here. Obviously there's a lot of block orders slamming the market at this point on the sell side, so that's sort of pushing in the move down. And I don't want to get in front of that. I don't want to trade against that. And we're getting through the VPOC. You can see I do attempt to go for a short there. But I decided to cancel it off. I was very careful on it. These buys right here, there's a lot of mid-sized buys coming in, and that's the full rotation. So the reason it didn't bounce exactly off 35 was because of these blocks coming in. That's why the tape's so important. And I get asked this question, where do I know to get in? Where do I get out? It depends. And there is no hard black and white answer. The tape, it's all in the tape. It's all in the tape. It's order flow. So, as you can see, it's rallying up really nicely, and this is actually kind of where the entry is. So let's look at this rally here, and we're going to focus on the tape. I know it's hard to see. So I'm just seeing, I see one red sell come in and then two blues, one red, two blues. Usually when you start to see, I know there's going to be a continuation here if another red can't step up above this 29, and it's not doing that. So that's why it continues to flow up, and retail's jumping in on it. You can see that a lot of sellers decided attempt to go for it. They couldn't do it, but you can see for the most part the mid-size tape is mostly blue, and it's a strong rally. And in the way it came off 35, usually it'll bounce on the VPOC to the money, but those blocks drove it down through it a little bit. So I know that there's stops accumulating up here. And I get, let's see, what price do I get in at 44 even, which is right up here. And you'll see why. It's kind of like a random price to get in, but you can see sellers are really starting to step up here. I mean, it looks, I mean, naturally so. I mean, look how this thing chops back and forth. So naturally so, you can see how there's a lot of back and forth. Now sellers are really starting to, now the thing is, sellers are stepping up here, but they're getting the shit pushed in, and now buyers are starting to take it at these little pivot areas. So the buyers are definitely highly interested in this. I know we're going to get out of it. I'm taking into context that bounce off the VPOC. Also, there was like resting size up here forever. It's gone now. You can barely see it at the 47, 46 area. That shit's gone. So a little bit of back and forth here. Fallen on retail. That fell on retail, and it sharply pushes back up because they're getting sort of stopped out on it. Now you got a lot of these mid-sizes coming in. And just that whole shit that I seen right there, I go for it. I'm kind of managing it because of the two mid-sized sells that come in. But again, the way this whole move right in here. So is this it? Because again, we're really getting stuck up here. So sellers have definitely been in control right up in this sort of zone. And yeah, let's go back. So I'm trying to get it to where you can see the retail getting fucked up, which I guess I'm not going back far enough. So retail kind of drove that down. So this move down is mostly retail. Buyers come in on it, stopping, a lot of stop orders going off. So we had that first wave of push on mid-size buy. Now we're having a second go, and we're getting out of this zone. And also, this happens to be, what is that, 44? The high was, if you look at this, 45 was where this high was. So I know there's a high probability we're going to go through 45 by at least a few ticks, based on the way this thing's set up. So I do get in early on it just because of the way this tape is printing. So it's a little bit of a spike up, but we're still kind of under the 45, and we're so close to the 45, I know it's going to test 45, or there's a high probability it will. And then you had these two sells come in, and I was a little worried about that, but then this mid-size buy of 32 comes in, and then boom, you got some blocks slamming it, and then we are off to the races. And then I know it starts to chop back and forth here. I hold it because the way I want to see if this is going to have a second leg to it, because usually on these nice push outs you can get a second leg on it, and this is so substantially higher than 45 that if it did breach 45 by a little bit to maybe 46.25 and it started to roll in, I would know that there's probably not a second leg to it. That's what I call a top tick turnover, and a lot of what I'm saying you're probably not going to understand. But the way this is moving back and forth, I know that there's a probability of a second push, or at least a test up into this 51. So you kind of have a midpoint here. You can see the price came up and bounced off 49. And it's sort of doing the same auctioning pattern that you would see on here. Like I said, back here it was auctioning below the VPOC, which is the midpoint, and then it bounced off. It's doing the same thing here, but just on a smaller scale. So I expect it to roll back up right here at 46.75. So it puts in a lower low from this other pivot. And once it gets to 48.75, I know that there's a high probability it's going to blow through it, which it does. And at this point, I'm trying to front run that 180 that's sitting there. Actually, I decided to get out here. Do I? There it is, and that would also be another top tick turnover. So I know if this thing starts to fail, and it's still running pretty good. There's our nice second little leg. The second leg it wasn't as good, and I actually pretty much nailed the top on that move for profits. But just the way this pattern's set up in here, I knew that, you know, we were going to at least run up. That's why I wasn't profiting on the pullback on that deal. And I believe, yeah, it starts to fall down from this point forward. So I nailed that one real good, and that was on one contract that was $387.50. Trade only went against me 2 ticks and went in my favor 32, but it doesn't end there. There's another stellar fucking play that sets up on the deal, And notice how, and this is again a 4-second chart, notice how it floats back down to my VPOC here at 35 even. So that move you just saw, I call that the boom and zoom. So it booms off the it booms the fucking VPOC and then it zooms up. And generally these plays work better on VPOCs. There's other areas where these setups and patterns will happen on other areas of like point of controls, but typically the VPOC plays are a little bit better. I had a boom and zoom yesterday, and it only yielded me 7 ticks, but it only went against me 1, so it was, the risk to reward ratio on it was so good. It was a 1 in 7 risk to reward ratio, where this one, I believe, is it's just a very high risk to reward ratio, 2 out of 32. So you got a half to 32, so 32 divided by 2. So it was a 1 in 16 risk to reward ratio on this particular trade, which is really good. And this is why your MAE and MFE are so important. So now this next trade, this is just such a good setup. Notice how, and I'm scrolling as fast as I freaking can, so give me just a second. I need to like amp up. Oh, fuck. Shit. There it is. So right here where you see this spike it down on this deal. So we come back to the point of control, and the way that move was so overextended, it put in a significantly higher high, and it actually got caught up on this high volume edge right here at 50 even. Yes, it went through it because there was so much velocity, but just that alone I knew would cause some sort of issues. So that was sort of also something I was looking at, was this high volume edge right here. That just, in a high volume edge is just a random large node next to small node. So I knew that would cause problems. And since we put in a higher high, it's something I call the Z pattern. I got videos on this, the price action video that I refer to in all my videos. This is the same shit I play over and over and over, and I play it in multiple different ways and angles. This came back down here, and I knew that this was an 80%er, meaning once it puts in a higher high, yes, it traded higher overall, but once it puts a higher high in this particular pattern I'm looking, when it's straddling this VPOC, when it auctions above, so we were trading below the VPOC, we auctioned above it, put in a high, I think it was at 45 or whatever, came back down, hard bounced it, so I know there's a high probability it's going to put in a higher high. That's why I took the boom and zoom. We put in the higher high, and then now we're returning back to the VPOC. So I know that this is an 80%er, meaning there's an 80% probability it's going to go to the other side of the VPOC, which it does. Of course, this is right near the close. That's why you have, and I've been noticing that at exactly 10 minutes till close, there's usually a huge volume spike in a particular direction. That's been sort of a thing for the last few days, which is quite interesting. Right on the 10-minute mark, there's usually a big fucking move in a direction or another. But I knew that the way it was straddling on this was sort of an 80%er, and you're going to kind of see how that panned out in here. So I hit it, I take a hit at it twice. I hit it and get stopped out, losing $75, and then I go get back in it and then make 200, and it was a 2 and 34 trade, but I didn't take the 434 ticks of profit. I took a lot less than that. I took like 16 ticks out of 34, but it was such a violent move. So notice how it's resting on the VPOC, and I like seeing that size come in when we return to it, and it's just getting held up right here. So nice size just sitting there, and it came out of nowhere too, so very slow. Just a lot of retail trades getting caught up in this little deal, so I know that they're going to get stopped out. Just breaching it ever so slightly. Typically, I was a little hesitant about this. I'm like, man, this might fail because of the way it's chopping, but it's a good setup that I need to take. And you can see it's moving, and the mid-size tape isn't ticking back and forth. So, and again, unfortunately, this 720 just sucks. Boom, a block flips in on there, but it doesn't do any good. I like seeing that on the tape, and it's floating up on retail, so I know that just the way this is moving, it's going to blow through pretty substantially. Little do I know, it's 2 minutes till the last 10 minutes, so a lot of retail moving it back and forth here. And this is just a breeding ground of a large move. You got those two mid-sized cells that come in. I like that. And there we go. It goes, but all of a sudden these mid-sized buys come in. Nice mid-sized sell. I'm like, okay, this could be good. This is it. And this is one of these trades I'm going to hold for a more extended move. But now you got these mid-sized buys coming back in right here, this 20 lot. And then it just, two more mid-sized buys. I'm like, fuck, it ain't going to work. It stops me out. Just the I'm running a 6-tick stop because you do need an emergency stop. Doesn't mean I'm always going to let the trade hit that. Typically, if the tape verifies what's going on, I'm going to bail out of it. Like, there's a good trade today I lost 37.50 on. I lost 3 ticks on it. And when I entered it, the way the tape was printing, I knew it wasn't going to work. And it ended up failing overall, but I don't let it ride at that 6 ticks if I can't help it. But the thing is, you got a lot of these mid-sizes are coming in, and they're really not making much headway. And that 23 just came in and just really got the market going down on retail. It looked like he stopped himself out right there because that 23 came back in again. So that's kind of funny to see. So I know I'm going to re-enter it here. I know that sometimes it'll do this shit where it'll just poke through the VPOC a little bit, and then it'll do sort of this little shakeout bullshit. So I know the second go is probably really valid on the deal. And we also had more sell orders come in right here at this low, so that's good. And then that 26 starts to get the move cranking. A buyer fights back with 39. Really hesitant about this. I'm trying to get out at 30.25. Really chopping on my entry, but it's falling on retail, which is good. And when the move goes down on retail or up on retail, that can be good or bad. But in this case, I know sellers are going to jump aboard it because mid-sized sellers were actively selling here. Problem is, yeah, there you go. The problem about this fucking trade was, here's a mistake. I set up a profit target here, and that profit got filled, and then this got filled as well for a long, and then I got stopped out on the motherfucker. So that sucks. Usually that'll cancel off, but the market moves so quickly that it just filled it and then stopped it out. So that's what I would call a VPOC blitz. It's another name, and if that's the thing, you need to name your setups. If you're not naming your setups, then you don't know what the fuck's going on, and you don't know what's good and why it's good. And these are like solid setups that I know work because I've been trading them for so long. And it's pretty complex. I mean, as you can see, I'm factoring a lot of shit here, and really the tape is ultimately the confirmation on what's going on. And the way my tape's set up, the way my tape is set up is allows me to identify retail getting trapped. I do think a lot of this major moving was stops because you had a lot of guys going long up in here as well. So a lot of that was, but also it's the top of the 50 minutes. So there tends to be this big move going down, and you probably notice my mouse is yellow now. That's pretty fucking sick. You can kind of catch it a little easier when you trade. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that one right there.